Hello and welcome. This is Abhinav and I welcome you. In this video, I am sharing information on income received in non-resident external accounts, right? So, is it taxable in India? Now, the general rule of NRE accounts in India is that if you are a non-resident, any income that you earn, any income that you have in the NRE account in terms of any credits in the NRE account or any interest in the NRE account are tax-free, completely tax-free as per the Indian income tax law. That is the general rule that people hold, that any money that I have in my NRE account is tax-free, right? But there are some other angles to it, so that is what I want to discuss now. Important thing to understand is that though the income in the NRE account is tax free and the interest is also tax free, whatever you earn from the NRE accounts. However, there is a provision in the Income Tax Act that any income which is directly credited to a bank account in India. Now, understand, NRE account, though it's a non-resident a bank account for a non-resident Indians, still it's an Indian bank account. So the tax provision is that any income directly credited to a bank account in India is taxable in India, and it is irrespective of the residential status of the person. So understand this: if you are a non-resident, understood that your foreign incomes are not taxable in India. However, if any income that you earn outside India and you transfer it to an Indian bank account, it directly hits an Indian bank account. That means, for example, you are working in the US and you have like given the Indian bank account to the employer, right? And that employer credits the amount to the Indian bank account. It may be NRE, NRO, whichever account, and that particular credit, since it's a direct credit to the Indian bank account, it will be taxable. That income will be taxable in India, right? So that is a very important provision that people miss, right? So since NRE is an Indian account, if you earn an income outside India, transfer it directly to an NRE account, Indian government can tax in India. Now understand the difference. Transferring the income directly to an NRE account may make it taxable in India. However, if you take the money in a foreign bank account, like a US bank account, and from there you remit the income to the NRE bank account, then it will not be taxed. It's a settled principle of law that the remittance is never taxable. It's basically, if the income is directly credited in an Indian bank account, then it is taxable. So, fundamentally speaking, yes, NRE account is totally tax free. However, if the income is directly credited, if the income, now it should be an income. If it is not an income, it's just a remittance, it's not. But if it's an income, for example, salary income or any earnings from business that you are transferring, then it can be taxed in India. One more important thing is that deposits of more than 10 lakhs in NRE account need to be reported. So there is a complete list of significant financial transactions that the bank needs to report it to the income tax department. So 10 lakhs and above, any amount that is credited, that is deposited in your NRE, NRO, savings bank, resident bank, whichever accounts, they will be reported to the Indian tax authorities. Now, reporting to the Indian tax authorities doesn't mean that it becomes taxable. It's just that there is a kind of heightened sense of, the income tax department will be getting these details, and they may question, right? They may question. For example, if they get the details, they may kind of inquire that, why this amount is credited. See, understand one thing: it's a non-resident account. However, it's an Indian account. The Indian tax authorities are fully justified in asking the source of the funds, where from this money is there, right? Because ultimately, it's not that. See, Indian tax department or Indian tax law doesn't say that any money that you earn in NRE account, Indian tax authorities will never question that, right? No, that is never the thing, right? It's not like, so if you want that, then there are other jurisdictions which do not question whatever the funds are there. But no, it doesn't happen in India. They are fully authorized, and they have the right to check and ask if at all your return gets selected in a scrutiny. For example, there are lot of high value deposits in your NRE account, so you need to have the documentation in place that the income was earned in India, the income was credited out of India, it is just being remitted back to India to the NRE account, right? So that kind of a preparation you need to have. Now, When it is not taxable, there are two situations. One, if it is not in the nature of income. For example, if you transfer the so it's like a remittance, or second, it's a remittance, or it's a kind of gift to a relative, which is basically not taxable as per the Indian tax law, then it is not taxable. Second is where the income belongs to a seafarer. So I remember in 2015, 2016, there was a few judgments. So basically these seafarers, what they do is they don't have a foreign bank account, right? They have the NRE account, and they transfer the money, whatever earnings they have in their earnings from foreign operations, they transfer it to the NRE account. So there were certain judgments which held that the income that is transferred to the NRE account, they directly transfer to the NRE account. So those judgments said that they will be taxable, and there was a huge uproar. I remember at that time I had even written an article on this on my website, and that article kind of became viral, and a lot of in the seafarer community, a lot of people read that article. And because that was a practical challenge at that time, because there was a lot of confusion in the seafarer community what to do. And then there was this circular that came, circular number 3/2017, where the CBDT clarified that only in respect of seafarers, this circular is only for the seafarers. Seafarers, if they credit any amount to the Indian NRE account directly, that will not be taxable in India. So that kind of an exemption that is there available is only for the seafarers. It is not available for the other people, right? So then in those two cases it is not taxable, but in other cases it may be taxable, right? Okay. So the right approach, as I said, first, always never directly receive, if you are a non-resident, as per the Indian tax law, never receive the income in India directly. Ensure, first of all, if you are even receiving, that it should not be in the nature of income. But always first receive the income in a bank account outside India, and then transfer it to an NRE. Yes, then you can definitely transfer to a NRE account in India. No problem. Okay. And important thing, you can continue to maintain bank account outside India after, as per FEMA. So for example, what happens is that you return back to India, you can still maintain a bank account in US or maybe UAE. There is no prohibition. FEMA allows you, Indian FEMA regulations allow you to maintain bank account outside. So if you have, like, for example, you are a returning NRI from US, you can still maintain the bank account. If you have kind of US investments, your 401k, or your stock investments, brokerage accounts are there in US, always have a bank account in US. Keep a bank account active in US, receive whatever the credit is in that bank account, and then remit it to Indian bank account, rather than remitting directly to the Indian bank account, right? Okay. If Indian tax authorities try to tax any credits in NRE, then you can check the DTA provisions, right? So now think of a situation where there is an income which is directly credited in the NRE account. Indian tax department is well within its rights to question and tax the income, because the income is directly received in India, irrespective of your residential status. It is taxable in India. Then, if you are a tax resident of, say, US, right? You have to be a tax resident of some other country, right? If you are not a tax resident of US or some other country, then you cannot claim DTA benefit. If you're a tax resident of US, you can check the DTA provisions between India and US for that particular income, and then you can claim an exemption. Now, for claiming the exemption, you will, if you claim an exemption as per the DTAA, then you will need a tax residency certificate in that country, in US, and I'll make a separate video on how to get a tax residency certificate, TRC, from the IRS. I will make a separate video on that, right? So then you can request a TRC, claim the DTA, state the exact article or a provision where you are claiming a credit, and that you can claim. Now, disclose the income remitted to NRE in Schedule EI. See, this is not like a must, but I always suggest, as a best practice. So first, best practice for non-residents. If you are a non-resident, even if your income is below the exemption limit, what is the exemption limit? It's 3 lakhs under the new tax regime in India right now, as I'm speaking. Even if the income, if you even if your income is below the tax exemption limit in India, you should file a tax return in India, right? It's always advisable. Just helps maintain continuity. It avoids kind of tax inquiries that you have not filed the return, right? If you hold a PAN in India, might as well file a tax return in India. Just costs a few thousand rupees, but it will give you peace of mind. Now, when you file a tax return in India and you have incomes credited to the NRE account, you might as well just put those incomes in Schedule EI, right? Schedule EI is basically exempt income. Exempt income is basically which are incomes which are not taxable, right? So what it does is that later on the income tax department cannot levy a concealment penalty. For example, they want to kind of levy a penalty on you that you did not kind of inform us that you get. So they decide, okay, the income was directly credited in an Indian bank account and you should have paid tax. The assessing officer will not be able to levy a concealment penalty to you because you have at least declared that income in Schedule EI. You have a reason to say that, okay, I was not aware of this provision that income will be, because it's still a gray area, right? But at least I declared the income in Schedule EI, right? So the concealment penalty, which is much more than a normal penalty, that they cannot levy, right? So this is something that you can explore. Go in Schedule EI and aggregate income, just disclose in Schedule EI, and you can mention that incomes earned outside India, right? Okay. Have sufficient documentation that, so for like at least for the 6 years. So generally the income tax department in India can go back 6 years, 3 years in normal cases, and 3 more years if like the incomes are like uh, they suspect that it is the income which escapes assessment, or so they can go back at least for, I will say, even not for you 6 years, just keep it for 10 years, right? Have your sufficient documentation, that means your employment contract, your W-2, right? In tax returns in whatever to IRS that you have made the tax payment, right? All that documentation, just have something like a folder wise, like for example calendar year 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, right? So tax payments in US, like that kind of a folder for US you can have, and then you have can also have an India folder. So have your kind of sufficient documentation in place, because if the inquiry is made, then you can have the ready. You don't have to kind of look at your emails and then you don't frantically search for those places. You have the information in your folder, right? Okay. Then uh, NRE account interest, as I said, see, NRE account interest is non-taxable as per Indian tax law. Very clear, specific exemption is there. But if you are like a US resident, it will be taxable in your host country. So don't be under the impression that it's a total tax-free income. No, it will be taxable in the host country, whichever wherever you are. So in US, it will be taxable as interest income. Also, the NRE account will need to be reported. For example, if you are a US resident, then in the F bar and 8938, you need to disclose that those accounts and NRE accounts in your uh, F bar you need to file to the FinCEN, and 8938 you need to file as along with your tax return. So that care you need to take. So that is it. I hope this video was useful, give you some perspective. If you have any questions, do feel free to share in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much.